Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this last slot of the 24 hours conference. And we are pleased to be here to have the possibility to conclude this series of discussions, bringing up again the role of civil society and their engagement in combating organized crime. I am Anna Razzi del Frate. I am the chair of the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice in Vienna. And I would like to introduce some of the colleagues that are doing the work with us and what we are doing at the Alliance. So, first of all, the role of the Alliance includes many members from all over the world, from all regions of the world. The role is to make sure that we provide and facilitate an entry point for our members to get into the UN processes, UN events and other international events, and to facilitate the understanding of the substantive issues at stake and how they become relevant for the international discussion, to amplify the voice of members and help them play a role of independent third-party monitoring, for example, the implementation of international commitments that states have made. The scope of our mandate is very broad because the Alliance includes the entire area of work of the UN Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, for example, and the two crime-related conventions, the UN Convention on Transnational Organized Crime and the UN Convention Against Corruption. The Congress on Crime, the Crime Congress that takes place every 5 years. And now we are getting engaged with the civil society participation in the ad hoc committee to elaborate the cybercrime convention that we start working early in 2022. And we are also trying to facilitate the discussion of issues related to crime prevention more broadly in other streams of work of the UN, for example, the Commission on the Status of Women and the High-Level Political Forum, HLPF. In particular, what we would like to talk about today with the friends and colleagues we have invited is a survey that we recently carried out on engagement and good practices of civil society in combating transnational organized crime. This is really an exercise that helped us to take stock of the experience and practices of NGOs, in especially in areas that are relevant to the implementation of the UNTOC, the UN Transnational Organized Crime Convention, and the standards and norms of the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. And the two participants, the two speakers we have invited today, will share with us good practices and examples. And I would like, with this, to give the floor to our first speaker, who is Miriam Baker, who is the representative at the UN in Geneva for the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Charity of the Good Shepherd. Miriam, the floor is yours. The microphone.
Thank you, Anna. So my congregation deals worldwide with the phenomenon of human trafficking. That is one of our main working fields and focus points also at the United Nations. And that is why I will explain from this organized crime of human trafficking, what we are doing and how we think we can work best. The second slide, please. So the Congregation of Our Lady of Charity of the Good Shepherd is a faith-based NGO, which is a social service provider in over 70 countries. For close to 150 years, with a focus on human trafficking. For 25 years, we are in special consultative status with ECOSOC of the United Nations. So we promote an end to slavery in our times, and our vision is, we believe that the new generation can build a world without slavery, a world where everyone is treated equally, a world where those who coerce or deceive people into forced labor or steal other people's freedoms are brought to justice, a world where everyone is included in the development, a world where everyone can walk free, and a world where each person's rights are upheld. Next slide. The organization's mission objective is to provide care, welfare, and all forms of intervention to those in poverty, victims of gender-based violence, and other forms of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Our vision is that one person is of more value than the whole world. Our mission, that we are committed to reaching out with compassion and respect, empowering each person to wholeness and full potential. Our core values are compassion, gratitude, respect, integrity, and zeal in the work. The next slide, please. We engage at the UN in New York, in Geneva, and Vienna. The main goal for this work is to raise awareness that human trafficking can be tackled only if the demand for modern-day slaves is eradicated. And that needs information, education, and explanation. We also provide the data and best practices to the several mechanisms that exist in the United Nations. We do this, for example, by written submissions, oral statements, addressing the Human Rights Council, the UPR, CEDAW, CRC, and special rapporteurs. Next slide, please. To do this work, it is crucial to do network, because we are one organization. Even if we are in many countries, there are a lot of other organizations doing this work who can reach out to other areas to have another experience, and working together, like the transnational crime works together, is crucial to be more effective. It's necessary to bundle forces. We have a lot of partners, but I will explain our co-working with two of the main partners. One is called Renate, Religious in Europe Networking Against Trafficking and Exploitation. It's also faith-based, but also including of all faiths, all people who want to work together. So it's not only faith-based, we are very open. And the Sovereign Order of Malta, they have an ambassador, and they are really at the United Nations and are dedicated also to fight human trafficking. You see there's a logo, no human trafficking. Next slide, please. So I start with the co-working with Renate. You see the map, and in all these countries of Europe, Renate has contact to shelters, to people on the ground who are working with survivors of human trafficking. And that is quite a lot. Our congregation, the presence in Europe is getting weaker because we have more members now in Latin America and Asia. So for me, it is very precious to have all these contacts in Europe. And so, for example, we had one example that the Special Rapporteur of Human Trafficking had child trafficking had visited Bulgaria, and there was a report. And our grassroots through Renate in Bulgaria, they really wanted a change in a certain law. And this change was also mentioned in the report of the special rapporteur. So we could give a statement and we could support what was said and explain some backgrounds. And then there was a discussion between the government of Bulgaria and the social workers in Bulgaria. It was via social media where the statement was uploaded. So this was really good to have the discussion going. And normally we would not have been able to do this because we are not in Bulgaria. But this networking makes it possible to bring information to be listened, to be heard, and also to give a profound knowledge from the ground. Because the people working day by day know best what they need and what is needed. So that is one of the points that we want to give to the United Nations. The next slide, please. So Renate overall is working mainly in these areas like direct action and prevention, with shelters, with working with survivors of human trafficking, capacity building, that is a training of co-workers and also training trainers. And I know that in Albania, there are survivors of human trafficking who train already other co-workers with their experience. So there is a lot of things are going on. Then advocacy and lobbying to have a change, and research and development. So sometimes we ask our members to give some data. So now the last was research about the gaps of law regarding human trafficking in Europe. And we got information and tried to compile it. And it was a university in England who did this for us. So that is because data are important. So we did this to improve our work. Next slide. Yeah, that is some concrete work, but Renate is doing now. It was a lockdown, but we started also to give webinars, symposiums, Zoom meetings, using many other platforms with colleagues and partners. Crisis management, you know, the hotlines couldn't be reached in some countries because the women couldn't exit their houses. Then discernment and orientation, advocacy and awareness raising. It was all going on during lockdown. Next slide, please. Then we provided a film festival. It was hybrid. It took place in United Kingdom, and some people could be there in person, and it was also transferred on YouTube to follow. And it was like a concourse that several organizations, everybody, they could send short films about human trafficking. And then they were shown, and a winner was selected. So to have some material for our advocacy work. Next slide, please. Yeah, now I come to the networking with the Sovereign Order of Malta. And you see, it is not only the Sovereign Order of Malta. All these organizations that you see down in the white field have already contributed to the work we are doing. So it's a huge network. And what we are doing together, co-planning, is a series of webinars about human trafficking. And this idea came when COVID came and lockdown, and we couldn't engage as we did before. We decided to use the time to give informative and educating webinars, which we could later on use. So, and it is a huge collaboration. The next webinar will be on the next Tuesday at 6 o'clock p.m. or 6:30 in Geneva time, and you can register on www.atlaudatosi.org. Next slide, please. Here you see the recordings of all the webinars we have realized, and there are also translations. You find it English, French, German, Italian, Russian, Spanish, and simplified Chinese as subtitles. And you will find it on the website. Speaking with the Alliance, we decided to put some information later on the website of the Alliance, so you can go back to these links and find the information I provide here. Then the Sovereign Order of Malta has a digital library on human trafficking where you can find information. And then the next project we are thinking about, and we will realize probably from January on, is to work with an online course on human trafficking. The course is already created, and you find the link there, and we plan to do it interactive. So could you please give the next slide? Yeah, so here you see the website, CUHD, and there are several online courses. But we will work with an English course, educative course about human trafficking. And we make a pilot project, so we make it a little bit shorter than we could do it, just to see if there is interest and how it runs. And that means, though the course is there, and we have identified 4 important topics like trafficking and migration, or what is human trafficking, you know. So, and we will deal with these topics. And so we want to have people who are interested in this. And we will have, every 2 weeks, we will have a Zoom session with the interested participants. So for the first week, because it's very much material, we will give two weeks. And they can choose a topic that they are interested in and give a short presentation. And the ambassador of the Sovereign Order of Malta, Michel Voti, and I, we will be there, and we will listen to it, we will give comments, and we want to have a discussion about the participants, because this strengthens the motivation to go on, and this nourishes also the thinking. You know, the discussion and motivation are very important for learning. And we will do this for 4 topics. That means about 8 weeks. And as Michel Voti is a professor at Webster University, we will also be able to give a certificate of attendance to the participants. So that is a pilot project that we are planning in the interactive way. I think, yeah, and the next slide, please. The last one, I think. Here you see.
Yes, if you can conclude with this slide, yes, thank you.
So this is, again, a lot of information, and you will find it on the website of the Alliance, just to see what is also happening. That is the concrete involvement of an NGO or of civil society too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Miriam. This was a very comprehensive presentation. I will stop sharing, but I hope that participants who are interested can go to the website of the Alliance to access these resources. And you can always, of course, contact us and Miriam directly. Miriam, I think this was an excellent example of how to create a network connecting organizations that work in the field, that work locally, specifically with shelters and very specific actions with a bigger picture, something that can amplify their action and make their voices heard at the international level. So thank you very much for this very concrete example. And now we would like to hear from Farai Maguvu. Farai is the founding director and current director of the Center for National Resource Governance in Zimbabwe. And Farai also has a lot of interesting experiences to share. Farai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So I will talk briefly about the work that we do at Center for Natural Resource Governance. First, I want to give just a background that Zimbabwe is not a democratic state. We are an authoritarian state And in 2017, we had a military coup that overthrew the government. And the government that we have today is a product of the military coup. So the army in Zimbabwe is a very powerful unit, which is also enmeshed in government. A lot of generals exchanged their camouflages for the suits in 2017. So they are in government, but they are still generals. So that's the kind of the political atmosphere in Zimbabwe, where you've got a lot of involvement of the security sector in the governance of the country. Zimbabwe is also a country that is very rich in flora and fauna. We also have abundance of mineral resources, and that's where our work is on. So looking at organized crime, the security sector in Zimbabwe plays a very significant role in resource looting. And since 2017, I think they've accelerated their involvement in the economy. And also that has meant undermining institutions of which regulate the economy. They've been undermined. And some of you may have an idea that China is a very big player in Zimbabwe. And since 2017, I think the role of China in Zimbabwe has actually grown because they also had a hand in the military coup that toppled the former dictator, Robert Mugabe. So our work, we operate in a very difficult environment where it's not like you've got a government that is trying to clamp down on organized crime and corruption. You have a government that is deeply involved in the corruption, in the looting of natural resources and shipping them to other countries like China, Russia, Belarus. These are the new power players in Zimbabwe today. So our work is to try to expose what is happening in the sector. And it's not an easy job, given the ruthlessness of the political system in Zimbabwe. Only 2 days ago, we had the chief executive officer of the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Authority killed in an inferno. There was a fire in his house, which was very mysterious, and we suspect it's because of the deals that are going on behind the scenes. And the work of CNRG has been to, first of all, investigate and expose the corruption, identify the actors, which is not easy, especially with China, because most of the Chinese investors have no websites. They have no prior existence anywhere else. They start to be incorporated in Zimbabwe. And to track such corporations, it's very difficult. And most of them are in partnership with the military or with the powerful political elites in the country. Hence, we have seen an upsurge in environmental crimes because the Environmental Management Authority of Zimbabwe, their hands are now tied because there are so many business mining operations taking place where there is a general who is involved, there is a member of the president's family who is involved, there is a cabinet minister who is involved, and that makes regulations unenforceable. So our strategy, like I said earlier on, is advocacy. We get the information, we bring the information to the public domain, and that has not been without costs. In 2010, I spent 42 days in jail after exposing the looting of diamonds in the eastern part of the country. But that did not stop us. There is a price that we have to pay when you're doing such work, and you have to accept it. It goes with the job. But it also exposed a weakness in our work in that the risk was concentrated on an individual and on a very small organization. And so it was very easy, even if I talk to a media person and not give my name, for them to know that it is Farai who has said these words. So we had to restructure and try to find partners within the country to work with. And we've been doing a lot of workshops around the country, both in the areas where the corruption, the looting is happening, and also in urban centers where we target mainline non-governmental organizations so that they can try to incorporate fighting corruption in the work they are doing. We are quite happy that today in 2021, majority of the Zimbabwean people have been able to draw a link between organized crime by the ruling elites and the lack of service delivery in the country. So if you visit the social media in Zimbabwe today, be it Facebook, be it on WhatsApp groups, be it on Twitter, Zimbabweans are demanding accountability. Zimbabweans are now pushing back on the government whenever they talk about the US sanctions and say, we are failing to do this because of sanctions. People are then asking, where are our diamonds going? Show us the stockpile of the diamonds which we have failed to sell because of sanctions. Show us the stockpile of chrome, of platinum, of black granite, of gold, which you say we are holding on to these natural resources because we don't have a market. So you are selling, but you are lining your pockets with national wealth. So corruption is now on the national agenda in terms of citizenry. People are aware that the source of their problems is corruption and a deep culture of impunity. And lately, in collaboration with the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, we have also started to build, to do what we call resilient dialogues, where we are looking at civil society at a provincial level. We bring them together. We start talking to them about transnational organized crime, who is involved, how it is undermining the future of the country, governance of the country, service delivery, and everything that the Zimbabwean people are being deprived of. We have also incorporated the media. The media is playing a very important role. I'm just putting a link here. You can see the resilience dialogues meetings that we are having. So our state, not the state media, but the public media, they are coming to us every week. There are issues that we need to expose. If they also identify some issues happening, they come to our organization for comment. So CNRG has also collaborated with other regional organizations, like especially in South Africa. We have been very helpful. And we have started to build a campaign that is called The Right to Say No, where we are galvanizing the Zimbabwean citizens to say no to corruption. We are taking the fight from the cities to the communities where the looting is happening. We are also organizing the people at the community level into special categories, like women. They have specific issues which affect them, especially where extractives are concerned. So we take time building tools for analysis where the women can easily link and say, okay, so when this company comes here, I'm going to lose my land. When I lose my land, I lose my source of livelihood. It means I'm going to starve. My family is not, and the women are beginning to become also very powerful in speaking from their communities. The challenges we still have, I'm just winding down now. it is part of the introduction which I gave, in that organized crime has become big business in Zimbabwe. And the security sector is involved. There are threats, intimidation. If you try to hold like a Twitter space, the government of Zimbabwe is paying trolls on the media, social media, who come to be very disruptive and threaten you. But thankfully, nothing has happened to us physically. But these are some of the things which even the people we work with end up being afraid to speak out, because when your name has been called out on social media, that you are a puppet of the West, you are undermining the gains of our liberation, that is not a small accusation in the Zimbabwean political context. But otherwise, I want to appreciate even the connections we have here. Our colleagues in the Crime Alliance, the NGO Watch, we continue to network and we learn a lot from what others are doing around the world. And we try to incorporate that in our strategies that we try to employ at the local level. Thank you, and back to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Farai. This was a very passionate description of your work, and you included quite a lot of very important connections that are key, for example, to the overall message of the Sustainable Development Goal 16 about the need to have strong and accountable institutions, and the right for societies to have a transparent governance. I think you have also brought up a very important issue, that is the possibility to pursue gender equality through this process, and this is something that at the Alliance our members care a lot about, and this is really very interesting and very important for us. So thank you very much, Farai. I would like now to give the floor to two colleagues from the civil society unit of UNODC, Anders Franzen and Billy Batware. They are both program officers there, and they are going to share their own vision. So how their work from the UN, from inside the international organization, they can support the work of civil society. And we are very grateful for their support, and we are going to hear what they are saying with a lot of interest. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anna, for the kind words and introduction. I'm Anders Franzen from UNODC's Civil Society Unit. I see some of the participants and attending this event. I know some of the names like Jay and a few others, but good to see you again here. We, as you may know, we work very closly with the NGO Alliance and Anna's organization and her network, but also with hundreds of other NGOs around the world on the various mandates that falls under the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So a couple of years ago, under the review mechanism of the UNTOC, we started a new project called Civil Society Engagement or Stakeholder Engagement Project, which we have nicknamed the SE4U, where the main target is to exactly reach out to organizations such as Farai's, the previous speaker, and other organizations around the world engaging with you with the implementation of the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime. So in order to sort of highlight a little bit more easily the work we do and how civil society organizations and stakeholders can get involved, we want to showcase a short video. I ask the organizers to share that with you, and that's 4 or 5 minutes, so please bear with us for this intro video. Thank you.
Transnational organised crime includes a variety of criminal activities carried out for profit by organised criminal groups. It brings about significant economic losses and environmental harm, and often involves human suffering and exploitation. To address these challenges, the United Nations General Assembly adopted the UN Convention Against Transnational Organised Crime, UNTOC, in November of 2000. The UNTOC is the first instrument of its kind to receive near universal adherence from UN member states. By joining the convention, states parties commit themselves to taking a series of measures against transnational organised crime, including creating specific domestic criminal offences, supporting extradition, mutual legal assistance and law enforcement cooperation, and providing technical assistance and training for national authorities. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, is the guardian of the Convention and assists state parties to implement these measures. In 2018, states parties adopted an essential process called the Mechanism for the Review of the Convention's Implementation. With the support of the UNODC, this process helps states parties identify their needs for technical assistance during implementation of the Convention and provides them with opportunities to exchange best practices and strengthen cooperation. Following a 2-year preparatory phase, the review mechanism is split into a 2-track process. The first track is the country reviews, in which individual states complete a self-assessment questionnaire on one of the 4 clusters of the review mechanism, which are criminalisation and jurisdiction, prevention, technical assistance, protection measures and other measures, law enforcement and the judicial system, international cooperation, mutual legal assistance and confiscation. The questionnaire is then reviewed by experts from 2 randomly assigned states. The reviewing states provide feedback, based on which they work together with the state under review to prepare a list of observations, as well as a summary identifying gaps, challenges, and best practices. The list of observations will be made available to other states parties within a secure module of Sherlock, the UNODC's knowledge management portal. The summaries will be made public in the 6 official UN languages. This serves as an aid to the state under review and provides the Conference of the Parties, COP, which is the central decision-making body of the Convention, with valuable insights to support the implementation process. The country reviews are organised as follows. All states parties are divided into 3 groups. The groups stagger their reviews by 3 consecutive years, treating the 4 clusters of the review mechanism one at a time over the course of 8 years. The second track is called the General Review and is conducted in parallel to the country reviews. UNODC will draft a report on trends and patterns based on the outcomes of the country reviews. The report will be made available to the public in the 6 official UN languages. The rules and procedures of the review mechanism encourage the participation of civil society, the private sector, and the academic community in the review process. One major innovation designed to facilitate this is constructive dialogues, meetings that provide NGOs and other stakeholders with the opportunity to engage with states parties and to discuss their observations of the review process. NGOs may also contribute to the implementation of the Convention at a national level during country reviews. The rules and procedures of the review mechanism encourage governments to complete their self-assessment questionnaires in broad consultation with relevant civil society stakeholders. All stakeholders may also undertake partnerships with states parties, among themselves and/or with the UNODC to generate society-wide support for the implementation of the Convention. For more information, visit our website or contact us at UNODC-SE4U@UN.org.
Thank you for sharing that video, and I think there will be a slides then coming up as well. I hope that video was a bit explaining how you can get engaged. But pretty much that's summarized a little bit where we are now in terms of the stakeholder engagement project for the review mechanism of the implementation of the UNTOC, and we call that SE4U. If you haven't heard about it, we will learn more about it in the resource page that we will share with you in a second. But next slide, please. But our units, civil society units, we are here to assist and implement activities to promote the dialogue between civil society and the private sector with the member states on these related issues. And there are many cross-cutting issues also, crime and corruption related to also drugs issues that comes under this whole nexus. So there are a lot of areas that are interesting to look at here. Our SFU project really then aims to prepare and help, sorry, next slide, prepares to help NGOs and academics and the private sector to support member states in the successful implementation of the UNTOC. We believe in a multi-society approach, and many member states of the United Nations are agreeing with this, that the member states and governments themselves cannot do it alone. They need you, the civil society members, to help them. And in order to help them fruitfully and constructively, you need to be better informed and better networked and sort of understanding the tools and mechanisms that are at your disposal. So that is in large part what the project is aiming to do. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, what has the SFU project done so far? Well, one of the key milestones that we did was to launch a new sort of knowledge hub or database of NGO and private sector and academic profiles that are working actively on organized crime or corruption issues. We call it the What's On. I will share with you in a moment in the chat the link to the What's On and how you can apply to become a member of the What's On Knowledge Hub. So far, we have over 350 profiles. We're hoping to get over 1,000 in the next year. We're also conducting a lot of capacity building and trainings and courses and workshops. We've done so for each region in the world. So we did the Americas, we did Europe and Africa. We've done Southeast Asia, and we are going, the next one, probably going to focus a little bit more on also the Middle East region and the MENA region. We're also working closely with SC4U focal points, such as Anna is one of them, of course, and we have different focus points around the world with various types of expertise, including that of Jay, who is in this meeting as a participant, and Ian and others that are helping us promote this. We also, by the way, working, and I saw the name of Ian, we're working very close in collaboration on this project with the GTOC, the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. So we thank them also for their dedicated support in implementing this project. It's very helpful. And we're trying to build networks. And going forward, we'll try to also strengthen the regional network and have civil society coordinators working from the field, not only here in headquarters, but from various regions in the world. And we've developed a lot of resources and tools, which you will hear more from Billy. Billy, my colleague, is here, of course. Billy, you can take the next slide. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Anders, and thanks, colleagues, as well, for inviting us to this session. Next slide, please. So, as the next slide,
I'm afraid I don't have any.
You don't have any other slide?
No.
Right.
I can share it, Billy. I can share it from here, I think.
Okay.
Give me a second.
Excellent. As Anders is looking for those slides, I mean, one of the most, of course, one of the important aspects that we look at when we as an organization is trying to facilitate the engagement of non-governmental stakeholders in countering transnational organized crime, of course, is also the role of the private sector. Simply because of the complexity of transnational organized crime, of course, its nature, but also in terms of complexity, but also in terms of cross-border activities. Here in this particular case, thanks so much, Anders, the private sector plays a very important role. So since 2020, just since last year, we've been implementing a public-private partnership project with the support of the government of Germany. And the idea here is, again, to find the best way possible to engage the private sector in supporting member states to fight transnational organized crime, in this particular case, trafficking in persons. So we have done so through 4 expert group meetings for Southeastern Europe, the Americas, Asia Pacific, and Africa, where we brought together experts from the governments, of course, but especially also from the private sector, to discuss how trafficking in persons can be addressed in both the supply chain, the technology, but also financial sector. And one of the main outcome of that exercise has been the compendium of what we call promising practices. I would certainly invite you to look at the compendium itself. It's very rich on good examples of what types of PPPs that work, but also the challenges that stakeholders that are trying to initiate PPP initiatives that they face. And then, of course, recommendations and tips on how you can create good, functioning, sustainable PPPs. So I would really invite you for that to look at the PPP compendium. I hope Anders will put the link in the chat. So next slide, Anders. Yeah, exactly. And Anders, we again put some more links in the chat. And what was very important for us here was to making sure that as we build capacity of non-governmental stakeholders, that we also build resources that they can use in their own work. And we have therefore developed a toolkit that helps civil society organizations, of course, also academics and private sector, to understand the convention, the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, the review mechanism itself, but especially to identify entry points for them to engage with governments in the review mechanism, of course, to engage with the UNODC as well. And one of the really good examples that we see from developing these tools is that some of the organizations have picked up these tools and made use of those tools and actually use the tips and recommendations that are provided in those tools to engage with their government. So we have quite a good example from Pakistan, for example, one of our colleagues, civil society organizations colleague, who has used some of the example in a guide to approach their government counterparts. And now we are looking to actually be able to do a pilot initiative in Pakistan as a result of those tools that he has used in his country. So we have, of course, developed some video tools as well. One of them is the one that Anders just played. Thanks so much for that. And we have now developed a new video which actually showcases the actual instrument that member states uses to review themselves. And this is the self-assessment questionnaire. So we will put those links in the chat as well, so that you can have a look at those videos. Anders, next, please. So I think there's some text on that slide, Anders, that I do not see, but basically I can see that from the other. I have the presentation open on the other side. I cannot see the text from this presentation, but where we are at this particular point, Anders has already mentioned the war zone, and I put the link in a chat. We are now developing the second phase of war zone, which is going to be more interactive. A lot of you who are interested, you will be able then to create within the war zone your own profiles, but also to interact with the other stakeholders within the war zone through the blogs, which will be very important for you, of course, to identify some of the best practices in different regions that we can use. Stakeholder engagement will continue to become very important for us in a region through the regional networks that Anders mentioned, AC4U focal points. So if you are interested, please do feel free to get in touch with us. We'll be able to inform you more on how you can be involved in that. Of course, most importantly, the so-called pilot initiatives. This is extremely important because in order for civil society to really meaningfully engage in the review process, there has to be a lot of work done at the local level, at the national level. So therefore, the pilot initiatives would allow us to bring together civil society organizations, academics, and the private sector at the local level to engage in a discussion and a dialogue on how they can address transnational organized crime in their own countries. So that's what we can share with you now, but we have more, of course, in store. If you have questions, we're happy to answer. And again, take a look at those resources that we put in the chat, and don't miss the compendium, really, if you're interested in the role of the private sector. Thank you so much. Anders, anything you want to add?
Yeah, maybe just a quick note to say that there's also an upcoming SC4U online training that you can also apply to. I will share one more link in the chat, and the course will start in English in I think in February, right, Billy? So beginning of February, but the application process will happen very soon. followed by similar application processes for the same course in French, Spanish, and Arabic, starting in March. So there will be 2 big courses next year online for participants from around the world in all those 4 languages available. So we kindly ask you to share that with your network if that is interesting to you. I think with that, I think we covered most of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I go back. Thank you, Anders and Billy. This is always a very very enlightening to hear about the progress of SE4U. We still have time for discussion, and I see that we have several people among the attendees who have been mentioned by us. So we received a question that is not really a question, but it's information that has been shared. It is from Trevor Stack. Thank you, Trevor, who says that he shared in the previous panel on civil society responses in Western Balkans a research project on civil society and collaboration in response to crime and violence with a focus on Mexico, and there is a link. So if participants want to take this link, and actually we are going to save these links and possibly to publish them in the on the Alliance website once the recording of this event is going to be available. And there is also a link to a first publication on Citizens Against Crime and Violence. Thank you very much, Trevor. Anyone else who wants to ask questions? Otherwise, I think that I may call a couple of people who have been mentioned here. In particular, I think that we have Ian Tennant. Ian, would you like to tell us something? You can talk.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes. Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentations. Just to say, on behalf of the Global Initiative, I mean, I wasn't here for the very beginning of this event, but I came in during the presentation from UNODC. And just to say, we're very happy to be a partner in the Stakeholder Engagement View program. And the coming period after this December will be quite critical as member states get into the meat of their review mechanism processes, and civil society need to take the opportunity to engage before we go too far into the process. And there'll be lots of ways that we'll be engaging on this, including through advocacy and direct help and engagement for civil society. So, please keep in touch with the team at UNODC, with the Alliance, and with us here at Global Initiative. We hope to, by this time next year, have more than a handful of good case studies of engagement between states and civil society on the review mechanism.
Thank you very much. Now, this is really very helpful to hear, because it's very interesting opportunities for civil society, and we would like to amplify them as much as possible. And I have seen in the audience a former colleague of mine, Demos Chrysikos, and since he is dealing with corruption and these issues, I would really be curious to hear his reactions and what he thinks about what civil society can do to support your work that is mostly with member states in their own advancing. Demos, would you like to help us understand a bit more what we can do to support your work with the diplomatic process? You there? cannot hear. Okay, perhaps he cannot speak. Okay, anyway, the question remains. I will make sure that he responds another time. Anyone else who wants to provide a comment or respond? We also mentioned Jay Albanese during the, and I have Jay here. I used to have Jay. Jay, you there?
Anna, yes, I am here. Good to see you and your panel. I'm very pleased that you had this session. During this conference, I've been very involved in helping to organize this meeting, and it's been great with over 2,000 participants in 24 hours. But for me, the civil society link is crucial because, as we know, the UN is an organization of member states, and states and business and civil society are sharing the planet together. And often civil society can be very useful when it comes to assessing impact, looking at evaluation, finding out what's really going on the ground. And with the work that the Global Initiative and a number of other NGOs are doing on the ground, I think if the Alliance can do what it is doing, in helping to channel these, these kinds of efforts, so the member states and others see in very clear terms the value that civil society can bring in looking at various impacts and assessments and evaluations. I think that's a very promising avenue, and I'm pleased to see the recent progress. So thank you and the other panelists for all the work you're doing in that civil society space. I think it's very crucial work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay, and you are there and you are working with us because it is really a very important opportunity that you are providing through this initiative of the 24 hours. There is a very good question in the question and answer, and I think it is mostly for our UNODC colleagues. And the question is, I noted in that earlier panel, the one on the Western Balkans that was earlier today, that civil society is often understood as primarily NGOs. Is that also the case with UNODC? Or does UNODC also engage with less formal initiatives, including women's organizations, arts collectives, neighborhood associations, church initiatives, etc.? Anders, Billy?
Yeah, thank you, Anna, and thank you for the question, Trevor. It's a very relevant one. In short, we work with more than just civil society organizations. We look at the holistic approach. We look at women's associations. We look at trade organizations, faith-based organizations, but also academics. And lately, like Billy just mentioned earlier, with the public-private partnership initiative, which we also started with last year, we're also looking more and more with engaging the private sector, especially in tackling trafficking in person and human trafficking. So we are looking at various ways to engage. It doesn't always have to be so formal. It can be anything from informal briefing sessions of non-government or academics or civil society at large who wants to join. We have had a number of faith-based organization events, which we have co-hosted or helped facilitate here in Vienna. That started about 2 years ago in the margins of the CCPCJ. The faith-based organization coalition on crime prevention and criminal justice, and that's more of a loosely, not so formal network of faith-based actors and organizations. So we look at all the actors. Billy, did you want to add something?
No, I just wanted to say that I think it was Trevor. He basically provided an answer in his question, which was to list a number of other groups with whom we work and we regard as civil society. So civil society, we use this as an umbrella term. And of course, NGOs sometimes are more active than the other, let's say, informal groups. But certainly, civil society is just really an umbrella term. But we work with everyone within the societies.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I would like to give the floor back briefly to Miriam and Farai for their comments on this follow-up discussion. Miriam?
Thank you. Listening to what has been said, I think it shows how important networking is, because it seems, and I see that we come from very different perspectives and very different working spaces and experiences. And so it's very important to know from each other and to know how to access the possibilities everyone has from us. And I think this webinar with all the links and all the information given helps a lot to stay in connection and to be together in the fight against the international and organized, transnational organized crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Farai?
Nothing much from me except to agree that there is need to network, learn and share. And I want to really appreciate the work that people like Billy are doing in terms of capacitating civil society and also equipping local actors with international tools that can be used. When we apply these tools, when we talk about them, especially in countries that are state parties to the Convention Against Corruption, I think they strengthen our fight at the local level. So I think it is important that civil society is reached out to and also collaborate with the international actors. In our case, I think it's helping to build the capacity of the organization so that we can incorporate what we can, which is relevant to our situation. But that networking is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see that Billy has raised the hand, so I give the floor to Billy, and then in the meantime, Demos will be able to answer my previous question. So, Billy.
Thank you so much, Anna. Just what as Farai was just speaking, I just was reminded of the point I wanted to make at the very beginning of my contribution, and that is and I know that the civil society space has been shrinking. People sometimes in the civil society sector can be quite frustrated. Anna, you know this better than most because you're involved in many of the discussions around this particular issue. But I just wanted to mention that really for us as a civil society unit within UNODC, our role is to making sure that space continues to expand as much as possible within the limits that we have as an intergovernmental organization. And usually what is very important for us, as Farai mentioned, is to try to bridge this gap between the international instruments that give us a mandate and that the countries are implementing and the local situations and the local implications and the impact at the community level. So basically we find ourselves somewhere in between, and that is kind of to try to bring these two stakeholders together and to bridge that gap as much as possible. And therefore capacity building becomes very important, because one of the reasons why the civil society space shrinks is because some countries are reluctant and skeptical with regards to working with civil society. So capacity building becomes important simply because then we are trying to making sure that the governments have, that they can also see the value that civil society bring to the table when they're informed and when they understand the mandates that their countries are entrusted to implement at the local level. So that's where we are, and we hope that with the help of the Alliance, NGO Alliance, in this particular case, GI Talk, that we will continue to bridge that gap and we will continue to expand that civil society space. And I hope that Demos will be able also to confirm that point. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you very much, Billy. Thank you. Demos, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It is a pleasure and an honor and privilege to join you, and I'm listening carefully to all the interesting points that have been raised during the presentations and during the discussion. I would like to build on previous points, also confirm what Billy said just a few seconds ago, and in response to your specific question, dear Anna, on how civil society can help the work that the UNODC is doing to support member states in implementing crime prevention and criminal justice policies. I would say that there is a lot of room for synergies and joint action, and I will mention actually two specific examples at different levels. The first one has been also highlighted during the previous presentations. The rules and procedures of existing mechanisms for the review of implementation of the two main multilateral instruments we are working on, and we are the guardian of their implementation, UNCAC on the one hand, and now most recently UNTOC, have specific procedures and rules for the involvement of civil society in the overall discussion regarding the review of implementation of policies to implement effectively the provisions of the UNTOC and the protocols. As an example, within 2022, in the coming months, we will organize the constructive dialogues that were mentioned in the presentations. And this will be actually linked to the work of the subsidiary bodies of the conference of the parties. So we are scheduling meetings of the working groups on firearms, international cooperation and technical assistance.
Demos, we lost you for a minute. Okay, go ahead.
Let me repeat my last point, that we are scheduling meetings of the working groups of the conference of the parties within the coming months. All the working groups, the ones on firearms, international cooperation, technical assistance, and the ones on TIP and SOM will also have discussions which will provide the framework for follow-up dialogue and constructive discussions with NGOs and the civil society, particularly in May, when the working group on international cooperation will meet, and I will have the responsibility. At the end of that particular week, we are making efforts, and we will have arrangements in order to organize a constructive dialogue with the civil society. The second example that I would like to mention, which is much more linked to the contributions and the role of academia in shaping crime prevention and criminal justice policies, is all the work we are doing with the institutes of the PNI network on crime prevention and criminal justice. We are working closely with all these institutes over the last years. And our cooperation with the institutes has resulted on the development not only of publications, but also on guidelines that could be considered by governments and national authorities in their efforts to make crime prevention and criminal justice more effective and also adjustable to new and emerging needs that have to be addressed. Thank you very much, and congratulations for the discussion and the overall framework of the arguments and the deliberations in this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Demos. Thank you. This is very helpful to hear, because Indeed, the working groups, unfortunately, are not open to civil society, and we are really looking forward to these developments and the organization of the constructive dialogues as building a bridge so that we can really get closer to this process. And
if I may add something at this particular point,
please.
It may be a bit premature to enter in specific dialogue on specific outcomes of reviews, because we're still working on the first stages and phases of the reviews. So what I'm expecting personally is that at least for the first meetings of the working groups, civil society will have an opportunity to inform and brief stage parties about their role and about their own initiatives. And then in the coming years and in the next meetings of the working groups, when we will have the opportunity to build the constructive dialogues on the basis of accumulated outcomes and the results of the reviews, then we will have a more specific framework to discuss on the implementation of the convention and the protocols at the domestic level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we are getting very, very close to the end, and this was the important point that I wanted Demos to explain, so that it is a very delicate process, and it is important, first of all, to share the wealth of information that civil society can provide to member states, and then progressively to get more involved in these processes that so far have not been really open to contributions of civil society. So I would like to wrap up, because we have to close perfectly on time, because after us there is going to be the closing remarks of the organizers. I would like to thank all the participants, all the speakers, to thank the organizers for very, very effective support today and during the preparations for this event. And keep in touch, because for us this is just a milestone of the work that we are doing, and we are open and happy to continue this discussion. Obviously open to many different stakeholders. It's not only UNODC that has an open concept of civil society. Also, of course, the Alliance works with a broad range of members and stakeholders. So thank you again for joining us. We are going to, as I said, to copy and paste all the questions that we received actually in the chat. So Trevor, perhaps we can copy your questions in the chat so that it's going to be saved, and to put this discussion points on the Alliance website. So many, many thanks to all, and have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Dear speakers, thank you, Anna, Farai, Anders, Miriam, and Billy. So we are unfortunately have to close the conference now. I would like to thank everyone for your participation, and from the speakers to the organizing team to the secretariat team. The 24-hour conference for 2021 built on an innovative idea. Can you have a conference with simultaneous participation from 6 continents and more than 40 countries? Because we now have more than 2,100 people participate over the 24 hours. Panel sessions average 40 participants in the audience. We also had a diverse group of presenters, 320 speakers from more than 40 countries. We were very gender balanced. This year we had more female dominating panels than male dominating one compared to last year. We also had representatives from academia, including the established professors, but also early career academics, policymakers, also those serving the law enforcement agencies, businesses, and civil society. So we are trying to continue with innovative formats such as film book presentations, also the infamous catwalks, which were intended to stimulate the exchange of ideas. We would like to thank all who participated, and in particular, the spirit of your participation, with a lot of engaging discussion, exchange of ideas, viewpoints, and global experience. The organizers stayed up all night, and we know some of you did too. So many thanks to speakers who stretched the boundaries of their working hours to join panels late at night or very early in the morning. It shows really real commitment. We offer our thanks also to all the people behind the scenes who helped make this happen, from the communications and logistics teams at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, the stream managers, and also the small army of volunteers. For such a big conference, it really went extremely well, and that's all thanks to everyone's efforts. Virtual conferences remain a necessity this year, and we are glad we could make this happen. Obviously, the virtual format has advantages and disadvantages, but it would take several in-person conferences to see everyone here, as we did here in just over 24 hours. We have also learned a lot about what works and what doesn't, but we would also love your feedback. We will circulate a survey after the conference for your thoughts. We will also welcome emails to the Secretariat with suggestions and new ideas. Once you have caught up on sleep, we encourage you to keep the momentum the conference has brought. Here are 3 tangible things you can do to build on it. First, reach out to the speakers you found particularly engaging and strike up some connection and conversations there. Second, come back to the website in the coming week or 2, and you'll find links to the recordings of the sessions and other resources as well, if available, posted there. Also, finally, join one of our networks, either the YASOC, International Association for the Study of Organized Crime, SAROC, Center of Research on Organized Crime, or ECPI Standing Group on Organized Crime, so that you stay in the loop with our events, initiatives, and calls going forward. Thanks very much, everyone, for being part of a unique conference experience. So now we would like to play a short video. Thank you, everyone. So that's it. Thanks very much, everyone. And we hope to see you next year. Hopefully you can catch up on some sleep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.